Welcome everybody to the meeting of the Mansfield Shire Council on the 16th of April. Welcome to my fellow councillors, to the council officers attending, also to you in person and everyone watching online. I'll ask each councillor to verbally confirm that they can see and hear all councillors and proceedings. Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I can see all councillors and hear the proceedings.
Councillor Sladden.
I can see all councillors and hear the proceedings.
Councillor Tehan.
I can see all councillors and hear the proceedings.
Councillor Webb.
I can see and hear the proceedings and see all councillors and not council officers. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And if you can confirm by raising your hand that you can hear each statement of each other council. Thank you. Apologies, Madam CEO.
Yeah, we have apologies from General Manager Business and Economic Development, Julie Williams, tonight.
Apologies from Julie, thank you. I'll read the statement of commitment. As councillors of Mansfield Shire, we are committed to ensuring our behaviour meets the standards set by the Mansfield Shire Councillor Code of Conduct and Councillor Charter. We will at all times faithfully represent and uphold the trust placed in us by the community. Could I ask each councillor to confirm their commitment, please? Councillor Holcomb.
I confirm my commitment.
Councillor Sladden.
I confirm my commitment.
Councillor Tehan.
I confirm my commitment.
And Councillor Webb.
I confirm my commitment.
Thank you. Over to you, Deputy Mayor.
Statement of commitment. The acknowledgement of country. Our meeting is being held on the lands of the Tungurung people, and we wish to acknowledge them as traditional owners. We'd also like to pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be here today.
Thank you. Disclosure of conflicts of interest, item 6. I'll ask each council ward to declare whether they have any conflicts of interest in relation to any agenda item. Councillor Holcomb.
No conflicts of interest, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Sladden.
I have no conflicts of interest in relation to any agenda item.
Thank you. Councillor Tehan.
I have no conflict of interest.
Thank you. Councillor Webb.
No conflicts in relation to tonight's agenda. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I have a conflict of interest on item 13.2.2. A family member owns a block of land in the vicinity. So I will be handing over to you, Deputy Mayor, to take the meeting in my absence at that item. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Item 7, the confirmation of the previous minutes. We have a recommendation. Councillor Webb.
Motion being that the minutes of the Mansfield Shire Council meeting held 19th of March 2024 be confirmed as an accurate record.
Thank you for moving the motion. Have I got a seconder? Councillor Holcomb. And those all in favour of the motion? Motion is passed. Thank you. Item 8, representations. We have now 5 representations to item 13.2.1 tonight and 1 representation to item 13.2.2. No notices with motion, and the Mayor's report, I'll take that as read, councillors. Unless we've got any questions, there's a recommendation. Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The council received the Mayor's report for the period 20th of March 2024 to 10th of April 2024.
Thank you. And the seconder?
I'll second that.
Rowan put his hand up.
Good on him.
Rowan Webb. Thanks, Councillor Webb. All those in favour of the motion? That motion is passed. Thank you. Reports from council appointed representatives is item 11. The Australia Day Awards Committee has not met. The Mansfield Shire CEO Employment Matters Committee has not met. the Goulburn Murray Climate Alliance, Councillor Webb.
Have not met. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Hume Regional Local Government Network did meet, and I have to report that the CEO and I raised a matter in that meeting. The meeting was on the 28th of March, and amongst other things, Mansfield raised that, put a motion forward, which was carried, that we should ask Hume Regional Local Government Network to advocate on our behalf to the Victorian ministers and Parliament that we should have a country character in the planning scheme and VCAT panel reforms to reflect our country character for the planning scheme, which was voted on and passed unanimously. So we're looking forward to having that representation from the wider body. The Mansfield Shire Audit and Risk Committee has not met. The Municipal Association of Victoria, myself and the CEO will be going to the State Council meeting on the 17th of May, which is next month. It hasn't met since then, until then. And the Rural Councils of Victoria has not met. Have a recommendation, councillors, for item 11. Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The council note the verbal reports provided by councillors in relation to their representation on external committees.
Thank you. And have I got a seconder? Councillor Slavin. All those in favour of the motion, please raise your hand. The motion is carried. Public question time. There are no public questions tonight. Officer reports. The item 13.1, the Chief Executive Officer's report. Councillor Holcomb.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment on that if I could, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Thank you. Madam CEO, there's a couple of points in your report that I think are worthy of comment and full marks to the groups responsible, or the departments responsible within the Shire. A couple of things that really stuck out for me were, one, that road grading in March, as far as I can see, was a record, and it was a 24% increase on the prior month. On the prior March last year. And that 24% increase represents 34 Ks extra of road that's being done in-house by our staff. So that, I thought, was an outstanding effort for the team, and they continue to do good work from all of us who travel on dirt roads. It's quite noticeable. Also in your report, there appeared to be a record number of visitors to the library for March, which I think was a great result. And that 3,780 visitors to the library. So it really looks like that the extension that's been done in there and the extra work has really started to draw in the visitors. But well done on that one as well. And the other thing which stood out was just the number of events that we had in town in March. And the diversity, I thought that what was interesting about was the diversity of them. And I'll just read them out because the diversity is quite extraordinary. We had a hunting and fishing expo, a working dog challenge, a Merry Jig Rodeo, a Mansfield Pottery Festival, a Honda motorbike riders get together, a camp draft, the Northeast Skate Park event, and plus 2 different cycling events. So the diversity of the events just goes to show we don't specialise in one area. We go across a whole lot of different fields. So it's great to see. But well done.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Have we got any other questions or comments? So, Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And through you, Mr. Mayor, Madam CEO, what's currently happening with the OWMP inspections? I know I asked the question a few months ago, and the inspector was on leave, so I understood that. But not much has happened in sort of the first quarter of this calendar year. So what's the latest with that one?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. As I understand it, the inspector is still on leave. He has taken a period of extended leave, That doesn't mean that there's nothing happening. There was a lot of inspections done last year, and the team are actually working quite hard behind the scenes, processing and following up on the results of those inspections. So you will start to see those results come through. I guess probably recognising too that we've just come off the back of a Christmas period and so there is with reduced resources in the team at the moment, but we're quite happy that once we get that resource back again, that will definitely pick up.
Okay, thank you.
Councillors, are there any other questions or comments on that report? So, recommendation in front of us. Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The council received and note the Chief Executive Officer's report for the period 9th of March 2024 to 10th of April 2024.
Thank you, Councillor Webb, seconder. Thank you. All those in favour of the motion? Motion is passed. Thank you. Item 13.2.1 is 152 Davies Road, Merrijig. The responsible officer is Ms. Embling, Nicole Embling, online. Coming in. Oh, there you are. Ms. Embling, I can see you now. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for coming along. We have deputations to this meeting, so we'll hear them first. Our first deputation will be from Mr. Russos. Is that correct?
Mr. Russos.
Russos. I beg your pardon. Sorry. Welcome. Welcome to Mansfield Shire Council. Yeah, Mr. Russos, you can stand up and do your deputation. You have 3 minutes.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the council and neighbours. Kathy and I are here today in support of our application, which seeks to develop the small acreage that we own for the cultivation of lavender. Our proposal demonstrates the highest and best use of the small sub 20 acre lot. In preparing our planning application, we enlisted the services of several experts in the horticultural industry. Dean Suckling, who couldn't make it tonight, but was hopefully was going to speak, but couldn't make it tonight, and Clive Larkin from Larkman Nurseries. Also have Ross McKinnon from McKinnon Design, who will speak a little bit later on. Our farm management plan, which was part of the requirement in our application, sets out in detail how the farm and lavender will be managed as to bolster and maintain the use of the agriculture on the lot. Lavender is a low impact crop that will improve soil quality, making it a valuable tool for soil conservation with very low impact on amenity and surrounding area. The lavender fields provide essential habitat for pollinators, which will contribute to the presentation and preservation of the flora and fauna in the location. The residential dwelling will provide the necessary infrastructure for the daily operations, including storage facilities and equipment, and housing equipment and harvest crops. Our overall design has been well considered in the landscape and wider region. We believe it's in keeping with the high country architectural language, which we've worked very closely with Ross, who's guided us through the process. We're currently in the first stage of the lavender soil preparation with the ripping and preparing the soil for the addition of nutrients. We've outlined as part of our farm management plan the various stages that we'll need to go through in order to prepare the soil and the infrastructure. Once the soil's prepared, we'll prepare the mounds, create the infrastructure, irrigation and weed mats to assist us with that. Just in closing, Mayor, we've been part of the Mansfield community for over 40 years. We've got several family homes in the area. It's been absolutely magnificent coming up here, when we can. We look forward to continuing that journey with our kids on our own land. We've embarked on a journey that we hope will bring some fresh life and breathe some new air into the land that we're on, and most importantly, create some beautiful memories with our loved ones, our family. Thank you for your time.
Thanks very much, Mr. Rissos. We have now questions for you. We'll open up to questions from the councillors if they have any for you.
Yep.
So, councillors, have you got any questions for Mr. Rissos? Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Smith. Mr. Rissos, when did you buy the property?
It was 2015. 2015, 2016.
2015, 16. And what farming experience do you have?
Well, when I bought the farm, I didn't have much, but since then I've learned a lot about fences and agricultural equipment, and pretty hands-on. So I haven't done a intensive farming course myself, but my wife is currently attending the School of Sears in Melbourne, and she's doing a intensive course there on agricultural and horticultural farming.
So no livestock or horticultural experience yourself?
No, not at this stage.
Yep. Yep.
Councillors, Councillor Teahan.
Yeah, Mr. Rissos, I was just wondering, do you live on the property full time? I note that. Sorry.
No, I don't. I live in Melbourne. We're in the hospitality industry at the moment. So we commute to and from Melbourne. As I mentioned earlier, we've got 3 other family homes in the area. So quite often stay there. But no, I live in Melbourne.
Okay, because I just noted on your application that it's initially the farm would take 600 hours of work a year. Big undertaking. But someone who doesn't live on site, I'd imagine.
Well, this is exactly the proposal. It aims to address the justification of a house. So the dwelling is required, as you rightly point out, Councillor, that there's some man hours that need to go into the preparation, establishment of infrastructure, and obviously the day-to-day workings of the farm, the harvesting in the later part of the year, maintaining biosecurity, pest control, and so on. So there's various aspects of the farm that require attention, and as you say, over the year, there's some of those requirements are more intensive than others.
Okay, so would your intentions to be to move up full time once you started this farm?
Is my intention to, did you ask, Councillor?
Yeah, I was just wondering whether it was your intention, given that it's going to take a lot of hours, was it your intention to live permanently on the farm?
Yeah, look, like a lot of people have transitioned from living in Metro, Melbourne. Our goal is to do the same, transition from Melbourne to Mansfield. Obviously, there's some infrastructure that needs to be developed in order to get us to that point, but retirement up here is absolutely, big on our agenda. It's only 2.5 hours from Melbourne. We've got adult children that are capable now of looking after themselves. So in time, that will serve us well.
Councillor, take it from Councillor Webb first. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor. Thanks for your deputation, Mr. Roussos. I've just got a couple of questions just regarding, I guess, the history of the site. And reading through tonight's briefing, I can see that there's been a permit issued previously in 2019 for a shipping container, and then sort of going a little bit further on down the track in 2021, council received a complaint regarding some construction that wasn't permitted. Between 21 and 23, construction continued after being given a stop works order. And then essentially the process was kicked down the road while construction continued on that process. And now you're before us asking for a retrospective permit. Can I ask a bit of the reasoning why you continued construction after you're told to stop?
Look, we had, whilst I acknowledge that, we had some storage. We stored some personal articles in there, and it seemed that the weather was affecting what we'd stored in there. We'd moved some stuff up from Melbourne. So we just closed that in the hope that we could just contain that. That's all.
Having a look at the photos there, it certainly looks like it's a dwelling you're constructing. So I think it's a little bit more than that. So I don't really accept that explanation. Apologies for that.
Yeah. We've got a caravan situated in that space, so it was more as an annex to the caravan, not a dwelling to be habitable or to live in. Quite very what's the word? Primitive.
Okay. I note on our recommendation before us tonight, there's a number of things which will need to be complied with in a reasonably short period of time. Should we agree to grant this notice of decision tonight, are you able to comply with those items in the motion?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Sladden.
Oh, well, actually, Councillor Webb is the last part of his question. But firstly, thanks for coming along, Mr. Roussos.
Thank you for having me.
I'm pleased to hear that you have read the officer's recommendation and you've seen the list of conditions.
Yes.
So that condition of within 3 months,
yes,
in terms of the landscaping plan, getting rid of the reflective gel, etc.
Yep.
To be completed.
Yep.
And more specifically, note 6 of the recommendation that this isn't done, then council can go to VCAT and ask to cancel the permit.
Yes.
So, given the history of the development, achieving those particular items within 3 months will be critical for you.
Yeah, I understand that, and it's something that we have turned our attention to, and sincerely look to completing. We've got good support team around us, so well placed to address all of those concerns. And as I said earlier, I'm pretty hands-on myself, so pull the sleeves up and get into it. So definitely looking forward to that.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
No further questions.
Thank you. So no further questions, councillors. So thanks, Mr. Roussos, for coming in tonight and giving us your deputation.
Thank you.
If you'd like to sit back down and listen to the rest of the proceedings.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Next deputation is Mr. McKinnon. You have 3 minutes from when you start. Thanks, Ross.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, councillors. Madam CEO. So I'm here to represent my client, the Roussos family, and I was engaged. Firstly, I'm a registered and local practicing building designer and been here for 12 years. And I've been practicing for 36 and on my own for about 26 years. and I have a lot of experience in regional housing and planning applications. I'm here to just talk to the context of the site is obviously delivered with the existing building that is in place, and our design of an extension to that building is in reflection of the current form of the other one. So it's a low profile rectangular shape, and the materiality is based on the basic high country woolshed vernacular, which is timber, galvanized steel, and colour bond, and just an arrangement of those. So we've considered, keeping the building compact, and the siding of the shed all in alignment towards the southern boundary, and we've also kept it low profile with a veranda, which gives us a nice shading and textural effect on the north facade, which is facing down a slope. We're looking at it's facing north, so it's perfect for passive solar. It's perfect for the views, so we're very happy to keep the current site where it was. In the design, we're using reclaimed timber, the galvanized steel and colour bond, and we believe it successfully blends into the natural landscape and agricultural rural farming landscape, which reflects many wool sheds and houses that have been built from this material. The use of timber wall cladding gives a rustic appearance to the main north face, and with galvanized steel sheet used to the south and west elevations in full. The west elevation is under a carport roof and faces directly to the farm shed opposite, so it's out of sight, line of sight. There's some minimal galvanized steel below floor level under the deck facing north, and again that's low profile and out of sight from the landscape. If viewed from the north, the shed on the south facade, it's articulated as well with drip lines. So there's a bit of architectural detail that we've thought about in the simple design that we have. I just want to speak to the galvanized steel sheet, and we've used it many times throughout the shires here and locally, regionally. And we've got them showing up in the plans on this project, and we think it aligns with the bush architecture, the styling influences of those wool sheds and the bush huts. And I'm very passionate about the corrugated gal steel. So we've used it in part, but we've also used colour bond. Thanks. We would also treat the gal.
It's 3 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thanks very much. Councillors, have you got any questions for Mr. McKinnon? Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Smith. Mr. McKinnon, when were you engaged to do the drawings?
That's a good question. I think it's almost 2 years. Yeah.
So that was prior to Council's compliance officer undertaking a second inspection of the site.
Right. I'm not aware of the timeline on compliance. So
the photo that we're looking at now, which was taken on the 7th of February, which on page 15 of the report of the building, that building was in place when you looked at the site?
Yes, it was. Yeah. So
it's more than just a bit of scaffolding, as mentioned by Mr. Roussos before, isn't it? That looks to me more like an inhabitable building.
Is that a question? No.
No, I'm asking you, that looks to me, look, is that correct? It looks more like an inhabitable building. Is that right?
No.
It's not?
No. Not in my experience, no.
Okay.
If you'd like a description of what I saw, then I'm happy to.
No, but he hasn't asked that.
No, I haven't asked that.
Answers to questions.
Yeah.
So with the the house that you've designed, what happens to that building there? Does that totally get knocked down and replaced with your building design? How does that all work?
So there'll be a review of the current construction methodology and also engineering. So it needs a total review for any replacement, repair, anything that's new or needs reinstatement. So it would be a matter of looking at that in more detail when we get to the construction drawings. But there will certainly be a replacement of material or framing if that's required. And in my assessment, there will be. So it's either a rebuild, but those decisions, that decision can be made with Tony. I'll give him advice about what's it's not a non-habitable structure in essence, and yeah, it's not classified as a dwelling at all from my standard.
So possibly fair and reasonable to assume that'll be knocked down. Is that a fair assumption?
Possibly, but whatever can be salvaged, we'll review that. But I think what needs to happen is a look at all of the framing in detail. Things like tie downs and bracing, all those things need to be incorporated. So at the moment, it's not a habitable structure.
And Mr. McKinnon, how much, in your estimate, what would it cost to build your design?
Good question. It depends which builder you use and how much detail goes into the construction drawing. So it ranges depending on the type of builder and the specification. We usually categorize it into a basic, medium, or high level of finish.
Okay,
so I can't give you an answer on that.
Just say medium level.
Well, with escalating prices, Councillor, none of us can put a price on buildings at the moment with much accuracy. So yeah, I'm not going to be able to tell you what it's going to cost.
That's surprising.
Yeah,
I thought you would know that. That's okay.
We seek that advice when we do a design. We send it out to builders to quote, and they're the guys building it. So they're the ones that go to suppliers with the current prices. So in 6 months' time, at the current climate is that you don't start going to construction detail until you get an estimate of a cost estimate from a builder or 3 to 4 builders, and their range in some cases double other builders. So we can't accurately price unless it goes out to a builder to price. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Sladen.
Mr. McKinnon, while I may share your enthusiasm for the gal and the country look, you do realise that our planning scheme, it does need to be non-reflective.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what sort of treatment do you use for that?
There's a couple of solutions: vinegar or lemon juice, and that can be applied before, during, or after.
Mm-hmm.
So that comes back to when.
Yep.
And you could apply it multiple times, just to promote the aging process. So within a year or two, the gal will patina to a grey. So you've got a product there that's less reflective and colour bond over time, and in a short period of time. So I'm passionate and arguably supporting the use of gal, and we've successfully used it on many projects, and we love it as part of that design, cultural heritage ambience that it has. So yeah.
Okay, thanks.
No worries.
Councillors, any more questions? In that case, Mr. McKinnon, thanks very much for your time and answers. Thank you. Our next deputation to this item is Trudy Horsfall. Thanks, Ms. Horsfall. Same thing, 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll read from my script. My name is Trudy Horsfall. I'm a ratepayer and resident in the Mansfield region for 25 years, initially in Jamison, and for the last 6 years as a resident of 298 Davies Road, Merrijig, and understand the importance of protection and enhancement of rural landscapes and the environment in this shire. Tonight I speak in opposition on behalf of my husband and I to the planning permit application for 152 Davies Road, Merrijig, which is non-compliant on the grounds that a permit cannot be granted retrospectively to a dwelling which has not been approved with both planning and building permits, thereby rendering the current infrastructure illegal and not defined as a dwelling. Having read the paper as prepared by the council officers, it is clear that this matter has only arisen due to the conscious effort of an unknown person who has raised the issue of illegal building structures, lack of appropriate sanitation and blatant contraventions of the council's original planning application issued in March 2019. Despite the intervention of the council officers, the applicants have continued to show little regard for the terms and the conditions of the original planning permit application, which continues to today and with ongoing works and intermittent habitation of the property. I feel privileged to be part of the Mansfield Merrijig region and believe the whole community of residents and ratepayers should respect the requirements of the regulations outlined in the Mansfield Shire planning scheme that have been developed over many years to ensure that our community retains the attributes that make it such a unique place to reside. The granting of the proposed planning permit, which in essence will provide retrospective approval for the illegal and unauthorised construction, is not a solution, but merely a band-aid attempt to address a clear and deliberate contravention of the initial planning permit of 2019. I'm at somewhat of a loss to understand how the granting of the proposed planning permit will or should in any way address the illegal and unauthorised construction of infrastructure on this property. Such an approval will send a clear message to any resident or ratepayer in the Mansfield Shire will be empowered to undertake whatever construction they want on any size block in any zone, and if on the chance that an illegal and unauthorised infrastructure construction is identified by council, don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness, undermines the integrity of the Mansfield planning scheme. We have planning schemes and regulations for a purpose, and as you, as elected representatives of the Shire's ratepayers, are charged with ensuring that they are adhered to, as it is only reasonable to expect that all residents and ratepayers should follow them. And those who choose not to should not then be rewarded with a retrospective approval when the breaches have been identified. I find the proposed planning permit mischievous, accompanied with a flawed farming management plan on fairly unforgiving ground, which is really only suitable for stock grazing and feed. Cropping is really not viable. We run sheep next door. The most recent amendment of the plans on last Friday noted to the very large and high shed to include 4-metre high timber barn doors in front of the roller doors is actually suspiciously looking like the plans to the original chapel that were removed from the first set of plans submitted. Should the Shire grant approval for this planning permit, what assurances do we have as surrounding residents of 152 Davies Road, Merrijig, that the plans outlined in the application will be executed according to the conditions outlined in the Shire's assessment?
3 minutes out. How much more have you got?
This is the end of the sentence.
Okay, sorry.
Assessment, and the applicants will abide by those conditions. They have not done so with the previous planning permit. So thank you for the opportunity of taking my submission.
Very much. Thanks for coming along today.
That's all right.
Councillors, have you got any questions for Ms. Horsfall? Councillor Tehan.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Horsfall, you mentioned that there has been ongoing works and intermittent habitation. Would you just care to elaborate on what you mean there?
As you see by the photos that were submitted in the council's assessment, the
Officers' report.
Officers' report, I beg your pardon. The ongoing additions around the container and the sheds, windows, decking, and you'll see also the current floor plan of the current illegal structure. The applicants come up irregularly, often late at night. And they are actually, living there. a couple of years ago, defecating on our fence line, leaving toilet paper there.
Okay, thank you.
Councillors? No other questions? Thanks, Ms.
Thank you.
Horsford, for coming in and giving us your deputation. The next deputation will be delivered via our statutory planner, Nicole Embling, and it's from Ms. Scott, Ms. Rhonda Scott. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, as requested, Ms. Rhonda Scott and Jaya Naidu have requested that this letter be read in their absence as they were not able to attend tonight's meeting. So I will read as written. Dear Nicole, regarding the applicant's amended planning permit application P030/23, we advise that the concerns raised in our previous objections to the application for a planning permit P030/23 persist despite the applicant's amended plans. We acknowledge that the application for use and development of land for a retrospective dwelling, 2 outbuildings, shipping container and gazebo at 152 Davies Road, Merrijig, is dependent on a farm management plan, and note the intention of the applicant to seek council's endorsement to develop the site as a lavender farm. We refer to the report prepared by Dean Suckling, Improve Proprietary Limited, dated the 18th of March 2024 on behalf of the applicant, and I quote, "The proponents have purchased the property and will develop the enterprise subject to the permit to construct a dwelling, and there is limited infrastructure on the property for the proposed enterprise. The dwelling, shedding and watering network will need to be constructed. The proposal in the farm management plan is for the building to be," and I quote, "an essential and ancillary purpose as a farm office, administrative centre, meeting room, first aid shed, security and biosecurity checkpoint, tea room, toilet block and monitoring post for a 24-hour a day, 365 days a year business." This could hardly be interpreted as a dwelling in the normal sense of the word and indicates nothing but a purposeful business structure, albeit with accommodation. The amendments to Tony and Kath Russo's permit application for retrospective dwelling have so far changed the proposal for a chapel to be reduced in size and renamed a studio, and later an outbuilding, and more lately to be removed altogether. Objections were raised by ourselves and other residents that the initial proposal for a chapel seemed to indicate a venue for weddings, visitations and such, which raised serious objections relating to the perceived opportunity for the site to become a function venue in the future. A valuable consultative meeting chaired by Nicole Embling between the applicants and local residents resolved that the size of this chapel be reduced and that it then be called a studio, and in later amendments outbuilding. The implication that the property might still be used as a function venue in the future is not resolved. Referring to a letter to Nicole Embling dated 2nd of October 2023, wherein Tony and Kath state, "Our proposal to establish a productive lavender farm as an agricultural enterprise in Merrijig and the Davies Road precinct is grounded in the principle of preserving rather than compromising the local amenity. It is important to clarify that our agricultural venture will not rely on introducing hospitality, tourism, or event-based activities. While our justification statement briefly mentioned such activities as a demonstration of economic diversity that could benefit the local economy, we would like to stress that none of these activities will form part of our application. We are fully committed to successfully operating a lavender farm without the inclusion of such activities."
3 minutes. Have you got much more?
I'm about halfway.
No, it's 3 minutes. Thank you. Yep. Everyone gets 3 minutes. They should know that. So thanks for that deputation through you, Ms. Embling. Obviously, the lady that gave the deputation can't be asked questions. So we'll move on. And councillors, have you got any questions for the responsible officer, Ms. Embling? Councillor Holcomb.
Yeah, I have. Ms. Embling, just a couple of things. If I'm reading the report correctly, the storage shed was originally meant to be sited in the middle of the the property according to the planning permit. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Councillor Holcomb. So to confirm, a planning permit P119/18 issued in March 2019
Yep,
was
that's one.
for development of a rural store in brackets shipping container. Effectively, as I understand it, a shipping container was placed on the land in response to that permit. However, it was not placed on the land in the position as approved in the endorsed plans. And just to clarify that, a rural store for the purpose of the planning scheme is defined as a store for unprocessed agricultural produce or products used in agriculture. And I'm not sure whether the shipping container that's been on the land since that time has been used for that purpose or not. I don't have any clarification on that, sorry.
So the shipping container was never placed where it should have been, according to the original permit, and what was placed over next near the boundary fence where it is now. Does that sound correct?
That is my understanding.
So right from the start, there's been breaches of the planning permit that the applicant was granted. Is that correct?
Yes.
So why then didn't we, at that time, instigate procedures to rectify that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. At the time, we didn't have such an active compliance program in the sense of checking every planning permit that was issued once it was completed. So this planning permit was issued, and we put a lot of trust in our residents and permit holders that they do act accordingly with the permissions they've been given. Usually there are quite strict conditions, plans that demonstrate exactly what should occur on the land. This one, I understand, wasn't checked to see whether that shipping container was placed in the correct location. And so it wasn't until a neighbour, the anonymous complainant, notified council of the building works associated with the structure, that council became aware that the shipping container was in an incorrect location.
So when the building works were notified about that, if I'm reading it correctly, they confirmed that the building works include a shipping container, a caravan, and timber framing to support a canvas annex. So that also is another breach of the original permit. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as I understand it, those works aren't related to that original planning permit at all. That permit only permitted a shipping container.
Okay, so what works were they related to?
They were not related to any permits that I'm aware of.
Okay, so again, there's been a breach of our planning policy, planning laws at that point in time as well. Is that correct?
Yes.
And at about that time, wasn't it? So a council inspection was undertaken, which found that the timber framing was far more extensive and resembled a partially built dwelling constructed around a caravan in May 21. There was also a chemical toilet on the land. And as I said, the shipping container wasn't in the place that it should have been. So there's been a real pattern here of just breach of planning regulations. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we go forward now to what's been planned, put forward here. What's to stop those sort of breaches continuing? What power do we have to stop that? And how are we going to do that?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. The officer recommendation to grant a permit includes quite extensive planning permit conditions. Those conditions include timeframes for certain actions to be taken. And those timeframes can be proactively checked upon. There is also a specific requirement relating to the treatment of galvanised iron for photographic evidence to be provided to council. All of those permit conditions give us grounds to ensure compliance with this permit. And as I believe it was Councillor Sladden might have pointed out earlier, one of the notations actually gives us leeway to issue a compliance order if those works aren't undertaken accordingly and go through those processes with VCAT.
So is there a specific condition in that in the planning permit that specifies timing of these building inspections and what we want to get, what has to be done by that time?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. There's certain steps that need to be complied with. So if I can take you to the recommended condition number 3 regarding land management. Condition 4. It does state that within 3 months of the date of the permit, that the first stage of the farm management plan needs to be undertaken to a certain extent. It is, however, my understanding that the Russos may have already undertaken some of those works already in the past few weeks, as was indicated in their farm management plan. And then bear with me. The second, I guess, real check on this recommended permit condition is condition 9 relating to the external cladding. So once each building is constructed, the permit holder would need to provide photos of the treatment of any galvanised iron on the buildings to reduce reflectivity. So that would be another time frame of real checking. The other notion is that once a building permit is secured, that those regular checks happen through the building permit process for construction standards and requirements.
Through you, Miss. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was going to suggest, so through you, Mr. Mayor, if I might just add in relation to the compliance side of things, speaking as the general manager, where the compliance team sit with. So Nicole and the Ms. Emling and the planning team sit separately from the compliance team. We will be working to ensure that the permit applicant is held accountable to these conditions, because I 100% agree that, and as Ms. Horsfall's mentioned, you know, that we do have a requirement for people to respect the planning scheme and to apply for permits. And it is not an ideal situation. It's certainly not a situation that any planning officer likes to be in having to assess an application retrospectively. We do take that seriously, and it is very unfortunate and a serious concern to me as a general manager that this has got to this point, that we've had to wait this long for even an application. So the compliance team will be given instructions to be keeping very careful eye on these dates and making sure that compliance is obtained.
So, okay, I get it with the stages is now. If something's built there, for example, the wedding chapel, or whatever the chapel is, if that's built 2 years down the track after the house is finished, what does that then trigger a clause in the planning permit as well?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so just to clarify that the originally proposed wedding chapel, or chapel as it was done on the plans, has been removed. If, as I think I understand your question, if they were to build an additional building and use it for a chapel that's not on this set of plans, if they were approved, there would potentially be planning permit triggers. There's a few waterways that run through the site, so it's likely buildings and works within 100 metres of a waterway would trigger the need for a planning permit. Depending on the use of that chapel, as it might be called, if it was for domestic purposes only, as in for the residents of that dwelling, it would just be considered as an outbuilding associated with an existing residential use. However, if they're intending to use it for tourism purposes or as a chapel made available to other persons, it would require a use permit for a place of assembly that would require extensive further planning approvals.
Thank you.
Councillors? Questions?
No.
Councillor Webb?
Mr. Mayor, and through you, Mr. Mayor, to either Ms. Embling or Ms. Crane. We have a motion before us tonight, which is to endorse a notice of decision. What are our other options in this case? Can we choose to not endorse this tonight? Where does that lead?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I might take that one, seeing as the recommendation before you has been prepared by Ms. Embling. So through you, Mr. Mayor, there are a couple of options that council have in relation to any recommendation from a council officer. One is to go with the council recommendation as prepared for you. Another is to use that recommendation and perhaps amend it in some form. A third one is to not go ahead with that amendment, that recommendation. It might be to issue a notice of decision to refuse a permit. That is certainly an option councillors have at this point. Any refusal of a planning permit, as any application or recommendation to issue a planning permit, needs to be based in the grounds of planning. So the fact that we're dealing with a retrospective permit, which is, as I said, is not an ideal situation, and certainly, we're not. It does make it harder. The planners will have made the assessment of the application as if it didn't exist. So if a planning permit had come in for a house and sheds on this property in this location, would we issue a planning permit, regardless of whether or not there were works on there? So they will be assessing it as if there's nothing there. And that's how the planning recommendation will have come up, with due consideration that there's houses and the like on blocks of a similar size in and around that area. If we were to, if councillors were to feel that there was a flavour to not support that application, it would need to be in relation to the grounds in terms of planning. So it would have to be related back to the decision guidelines in the farming zone or any of the other overlays that do apply to the property. And then in both cases, there's rights of review at VCAT for both objectors or the applicant, depending on which way they might want to go on that decision. So if a notice of decision is issued, all the objectors have the right of review at VCAT. If a notice of refusal is issued, the permit applicant would have right of review at VCAT.
Thank you, Ms. Crane. And then I guess extrapolating that a little bit further, VCAT would assess the planning application simply on its planning merits, not given the history of the site. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. The VCAT would only consider the planning scheme as it stands today, and they would assess the application as if there was nothing on the site.
Okay, thank you.
Councillors? Oh, Councillor Tehan.
Miss Embling, I've just got a question. Point 5 in the recommendation under land management, it states that prior to commencement of use of the dwelling, the actions as described in the farming timeline in the endorsed farm management plan must be completed to the satisfaction of the responsible officer. So I'm just intrigued as to the farming timeline, because, I mean, obviously setting up something like this is it takes 3 or 4 years to get to full production. So does that mean that, and part of the farming timeline I note in the farm management plan is the construction of the dwelling. So this is sort of saying you can construct the dwelling, but you can't move into it until that maybe year 4 or 5. Can you just clarify that for me?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. Apologies for any confusion with that recommended condition. I am just actually bringing up the timeline myself. I guess the specifics of the farming timeline, which are on page 18 of that submitted farm management plan, stipulates certain activities in a table. That table goes only until June 2024, so which would be fast approaching. As such, that short timeline includes preparation of the lavender rows, planting some lavender, introducing their lamb for the stocking and grazing that they're proposing as well. That condition is intended to ensure that those initial setup is undertaken. So that would involve ensuring all their fencing is completed for the stock, water troughs, any shade plantings, things like that. And then that first stage of the lavender. By no means is that condition meant to restrict them from living on the property until the farm is in full operation, just so much so that it is developed in such a way that council is satisfied that that farming operation will actually continue.
Okay, so from my understanding of that, by June 2024. Basically, that's as far as the farming timeline goes. So there's no real stipulation that they have to continue on with the farming with the time. Well, the timeline doesn't go any further. Obviously, there's a development timeline on the page above, which has a much longer business proposal. So I was just wanting clarification on that, because I mean, basically they can do the bare minimum basics and then away they go.
Sorry, if I might add through you, Mr. Mayor. Just to further clarify, that condition is only before they can occupy the dwelling to get that amount of work undertaken on the farm. And then recommended condition number 7 relating to a Section 173 agreement does require the endorsed farm management plan to be operated under on a continuing basis, which would mean that development timeline you referred to on the previous page would be required to be enforced as well.
Great, thanks.
Councillors, any more questions? In that case, councillor, no more questions. There is a recommendation from the responsible officer before us. Councillor Slatton.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to move the recommendation the council issue a notice of decision to grant a permit for planning application, etc., as per pages 29 to 33.
Inclusive,
yes.
We have a motion. Councillors, do I have a seconder? Pardon me. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillors, there is no seconder for the motion, so the motion is lapsed. Does anyone want to speak to the lapsed motion?
I don't think
you can.
Can't do that, Mr. Mayor.
So they can move an alternate.
Councillors, does anyone want to move an alternate motion? No? Right, that motion is lapsed. Thank you. Thanks everyone for coming in.
Through Mr. Mayor, I might just ask for some advice from the General Manager on any applications of us not having issued a decision.
Yes, so through Mr. Mayor, I would, in the absence of a decision, the item will just return to council at the next meeting at this point. One of the options you could, councillors could consider is referring it to back to council officers if there's any directions or further information or for further work that the councillors would like to have undertaken on the application. So you could make a resolution to refer it back to council officers for further consideration if that is something the councillors would prefer.
So as a, get this right, as a lapsed motion, it will come back to council. Yep, thanks. Councillor Webb, you had a question.
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to move that motion to refer it back to council officers.
Right. What grounds, councillor?
I need more information and time to make a decision, Mr. Mayor, and I'd like to discuss it further.
Yep. All right. Have I got a seconder to that motion? Councillor Holcomb. And all in favour of the motion, raise your hand. That motion is carried.
Those against?
Those against? Thank you. The motion is carried. All right, so that will come back to council on our next council meeting in May. Thanks everyone for coming in and making your deputations tonight. No, it's a strange being in the council offices, but thanks anyway, and we will consider what happens in the next month.
See you in May.
Thanks. Item 13.2.2. As I said, I have a conflict of interest on this agenda item tonight, so I'll hand over to the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Holcomb, to chair the meeting, and I'll leave now.
Act. Hey?
6:05.
6:05.
You got it, it's
We'll come and get them.
Thanks, Mr. Hare. Okay, we move on to item 13.2.2, which is 160 Owens Creek Drive. The responsible officer is Senior Secretary Planner Claire Wilkinson. Is Claire coming in?
She's right here next to me.
Yep.
Okay, sorry, I can't see
How do I
her
turn
on
it on?
screen.
Oh, do you want to come around here?
And I believe we have a deputation from Mr. Ben Willick. Ben, I think I can see you in the room.
Yeah.
Thank you, Claire. Ben, would you like to speak to 160 Owens Creek Drive? And welcome, Ben.
Mate, councillors, local building designer, 25 years experience, been on my own for 11, and responsible for the design of 160 Owens Creek Drive, which a bit of backstory to the site is I am the second designer where the client engaged a Melbourne-based architect and came up with a design that essentially was on top of the hill. The client was of the understanding that they could do some works, which they undertook and got a notice to stop. On review of the design, once I was engaged, we looked at the best aspects, which are to the northern and eastern side of the top of the hill, which are rather close to the boundary, and obviously quite prevalent in terms of viewing from the neighbours or from the east as you approach down from the new subdivision way. Moved the building off to the southern side of the hill, and put it down where the client wanted it, which was still a bit high, which in the latest revision we've moved it down another 5 metres.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Willick. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Sladen.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Mr. Willick, my query is in relation to the nearby quarry. Obviously, the owners are fully cognizant of that quarry. I don't know what the life of the quarry is going to be, but I don't know what my question is. But have they commented that they are aware of it and that they are happy to be residing?
Yes, they are very aware of it, which is a big part of the reasoning on why the positioning of the house is on the opposite side to the quarry, and the siting of the shed is to that northwestern corner in that shed location, so that they're not looking over their shed from the house, and it's around the corner near that quarry location.
Okay. And just a follow-up question in terms of, you mentioned that you've dropped it further 5 metres?
5 metres in height and 25 metres down the hill in terms of length.
Right. So that's Claire. Oh, sorry, Ms. Wilkinson. So that has occurred since this first came before councillors. Yes.
We received that amendment on the 5th of April.
When did we have our briefing?
before that.
Just before.
So following,
yes, yes.
the direction from council and the concerns raised in the briefing on this item,
Mhm.
the designer and architect, Mr. Willick, has submitted revised plans, which are now the plans included in the agenda package. And specifically on page 4 of the development plans, which is in attachment 3222.
Yes.
The that plan is reflective of the amended location,
Mhm.
and the former location, which councillors were privy to at the briefing, is shown in a dotted red line.
Yep.
So that provides some clarity in terms of the significance of the change in location to respond to our policy about design and siting in prominent locations and on ridgelands, to which Mr. Willick has been speaking to.
Well, thank you, Ms. Wilkinson, and thank you, Mr. Willick. I have no further questions.
Any other questions, councillors? Thank you. Councillors, do we have a motion?
Yeah.
Councillor Webb?
Sorry, Mr. Deputy Mayor, do I have an opportunity to ask a question of the officers?
Oh, sorry. Yes, you do.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, to Ms. Wilkinson, I understand this has come to council simply because of the estimated cost of the development. From a planning perspective, is there any other issues or notable parts that you think we should be aware of?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, the officer assessment report is pretty extensive in terms of the one area where we had some discussion, which is in relation to the prominence and the site having some localized undulations, which make it quite prominent in the environment, which the applicant has addressed. Other than that, as you pointed out, yes, the only reason that it is before council is for the delegated authority exceeding $1 million.
Okay, and there's been no objections, correct?
Correct. There have been no objections received on this application.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Good. Okay, councillors, do we have a motion? Councillor Sladen?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The recommendation, the council issue a planning permit for planning application P019/24 as per pages 40 through to 45 inclusive. Well, 42 in mine. Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Sladen. Any seconder of the motion, please? Councillor Webb? Anyone want to speak to the motion?
I would just like to congratulate the planning staff for working with Mr. Willick to overcome concerns that councillors may have had to come to this solution, for want of a better word. That's all. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Willick, I'd also like to congratulate you on the design. The design's outstanding, so it's a really interesting design and be a great addition to the Mansfield landscape. So well done.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's going to be a stunning building.
Yeah.
Yep.
Councillors, all those in favour of the motion? The motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Willick. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, you're not Mr. Mayor.
Little phone.
Get him off. No, we don't muck around. Councillor Holcomb knows how to chair a meeting.
Sure does.
Mara doesn't become.
Oh, is it?
Sorry, I think yeah,
You can come in.
Thank you, Councillor Holcomb.
Anytime, Mr. Mayor.
That was very quick.
Yep.
I think the next agenda item is the 13.2.3 High Country Arena Mansfield Zoo MOU for emergency use, and the emergency management officer, Ms. Watson, is with us today. Welcome.
Thank you.
And you're the responsible officer. So, councillors, have we got any questions for Ms. Watson? Councillor Holcomb.
Ms. Watson, I gather what we're doing here is, and the fact that it's an emergency use is part of the grant condition, is it? Is that correct?
Yeah, initially, yeah, that was part of the grant application for the funding. It was through the federal government's like bushfire recovery funding back from the 2019-2020 bushfires.
That's the reason behind the grant, and part of that grant is there has to be an MOU between both parties. Is that
correct?
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillors, there's a recommendation before us. Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Motion being that council endorses the Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, with High Country Arena, Mansfield Zoo, for the emergency use of the arena as an emergency relief centre for livestock and pets, authorises the CEO to execute the MOU with the High Country Arena, and authorises the Chief Executive Officer to execute further MOUs for the emergency housing of livestock and pets at identified locations around Mansfield Shire.
Thank you. Have I got a seconder? Councillor Holcomb. Councillors, would anyone like to speak to the motion? I'll put the motion to a vote then. All those in favour of the motion? And the motion is carried. Thank you. Thanks very much, Ms. Watson. The next agenda item is 13.3.1, which is the Mansfield Shire Quarterly Finance Report. The responsible officer is Mr. Michael McCormack, and he's just on his way into the council chambers now, so he'll be here very shortly. Welcome, Mr. McCormack.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I've just opened this agenda item, so we'll take questions, councillors, if you have any. Councillor Holcomb.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just with some of the grant income that we haven't received as yet, there's no doubt that these are going to come through. Is it? That's not in doubt. Is the amount in doubt, or is that vulnerable? Are we vulnerable with the amount? And when do you think, if it is going to come through, when are we expecting this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
The big items.
Yeah. Well, our biggest item, I think, is the FAG grant, where we have forecasted a large amount in June. At this point in time, we don't have a clear visibility from the state of the timing of when we're going to receive that funds. So there is some risk of this year. There's not a risk of actually receiving those funds, is my understanding. But the timing of those funds probably can be the challenge.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, I might just add that we were actually paid 100% of the 23-24 funding in advance in last financial year. So we have already received it. It's the timing, because that grant is usually a part paid in advance. It's the timing and the percentage that Mr. McCormack is referring to for next year's payment. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, it's the financial assistance grant.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So with that case, what's the work? How does that work? What's the worst case scenario for us from a budgeting point of view when it turns up? This year or next year?
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, it's
just a nightmare.
it's
It's frustrating.
it's from a cash flow positioning of council, it's actually, it only impacts really our budgeting and forecasting process. There's no necessarily risk to Mansfield Shire Council with the timing, but it does definitely interrupt our reporting of information, and it does make the information we deliver a little bit confusing too, because we work on a financial year.
Or when they give it to you 2 years in advance, it's even more frustrating, as has happened in the past.
It would also affect our VAGO figures too, wouldn't it? The VAGO dashboard, for example. Is that right?
I think we, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor.
Through
Yes,
the
it will.
benchmarking.
Inevitably, it will, in terms of financial indicators, it will influence those indicators. And so it can be a bit frustrating when the timing of it and the amount of it, we don't get any advance notice of it, or not much anyway. It's not a risk in terms of not receiving the money, but in our bank, as I said, we've actually received it in advance, but then the timing of the next year's payment, we have to sort of make a guess about that in our budget process to try and anticipate how much we might get and when.
And every shire in Victoria is in the same position, aren't they?
Yes, that's correct.
In Australia.
Councillors, any more questions?
Sorry, just one last one. Sorry,
Councillor Holcomb.
Yeah. The summary of the financial position compared to budget, a total variance, favourable variance of $5.28 million. That's basically the surplus, is that right?
For you, Mr. Mayor? Yeah, it is in a surplus.
Yeah. And I think what had we budgeted for this year? Was it? I haven't got the budget. Do you remember what our budget is for this year? I've got it. 9 million. Yeah. So we're going to be well under budget. Is that right?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can take that one if you like.
Yep.
That figure is affected by the carry forward projects. Is probably the main influence on that. And at this point, we've taken we've made a conservative assumption in terms of the income that's coming in. So there are two main factors affecting that forecast. One is the carry forwards, which with the amount of capital that was carried forward into this year, that affected it reduced that surplus by about $1 million. And there was a previous report to council identifying that. And the other factor is also the timing of the sale of the Lakens Road land, and that is about $1 million as well. So there's a $2 million variance there, and I think the remainder of that would be just basically the timing of other income.
Okay. So, Madam Chair, just to refresh my memory, so the Lakens Road we've taken up this year, have we, the 1.5?
That's correct. We had actually forecast that we would receive those funds in this year, in this financial year.
Okay.
And they'll be received, we anticipate, just after the end of financial year. So there's a signed contract, and it will be, we have delivered our part of it. We're nearly there in terms of the servicing of the block, but by the time the registration process goes through, we expect it'll be just after the end of financial year.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Silence, councillors. Any more questions? In that case, we have a recommendation. Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The council receives the budget report for the period 1st of July 23 to 29th of February 24.
Thank you. And have we got a seconder to that motion? Councillor Webb. Does anyone want to speak to the motion? We'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried.
Everybody with that?
13.3.2 is the gravel cycling program update. Responsible officer is Ms Edwards, but I'm assuming that Madam CEO, you'll take over from the responsibilities tonight. Councillors, have you got any questions? I have a question. Oh, Councillor Tehan.
Yeah, just Madam CEO, I've got a question around the community engagement and the operation of these routes. Can you give us a report on how the community engagement is going, where we're up to?
Yeah, certainly through you, Mr. Mayor. We have sent out 1,000 letters to all of the properties adjoining. As I understand it, that some of those letters may, because they've been postal, there are properties that we only have postal addresses for, may still be making their way to those property owners. We have used our GIS mapping to identify all the relevant properties, and through our rate system have addressed those. So there's 1,000 letters have gone out. We have also put up an online engage page and have already had, I think, about 188 views of that page, and have received a number of residents have already made contact with council in relation to just asking questions about the project. My understanding from the officers who've been talking to the residents and answering some of the questions, generally their response has been positive, but people seeking information about what's actually planned in relation to the routes. There has been a bit of a misconception that there was a new path going in alongside. Some of the residents who contacted us didn't realise that it's actually these are cyclists on an existing road. And the other main question was about speed limits on the road and the safety of cyclists on the road in relation to farm equipment, etc., that may be there. One of the aims of the project is actually to give better information to cyclists who are using our roads. It's becoming an increasingly popular, I guess, pastime or recreational activity, because some of the roads in Mansfield Shire offer spectacular views, and it's a growing activity. So the aim of this project is actually to give better information to cyclists who may be travelling along those routes about what they may find en route. And also, it also funded the installation of safety signage along the routes and better information and directional signage in hubs. So there is an online app that's been funded by the project that was run by Tourism Northeast across the shires involved. Our understanding from discussion with TNE is that if there are concerns being raised from residents living along those routes, there is the opportunity for us to amend what the information and update the information that's on that app. So we will be using the results of that engagement to inform that, and we will be reporting those results back to councillors. To date, I think we've had about probably a total of just over 20 responses, I think, in terms of people that we've directly spoken or had email feedback from. And yeah, as I said, on the whole positive, but some questions and some answers that have been given in terms of clarification about what's actually proposed with each of the routes.
And just following on from that, so are these routes currently open to the public to use?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, they are public roads. So cyclists are obviously already using our roads, but the intent with this project is to give the people that are using those roads better information on what they might encounter en route. And the app, as I understand it, is already live. It was being trialled and can be found already from people searching on the Ride High Country website. But we will be seeking information, and feedback from our community on the success of how that's actually travelling. I should also note, in terms of the safety, we have also done a safety audit of each of the routes, and that was done as part of an earlier part of the project, including some additional signage that was funded by the project.
So to date, is the signage, has it been erected? It hasn't? Or it has?
It is my understanding it has. I'm not sure whether everything is up yet, but if not, it should be shortly. So I can definitely take that one on notice and get an update for you on that. It's my understanding the safety signage was put in place, so we'll just confirm that with our field services team.
MCO, I don't think it's on the loop that I live on. I don't think it's there. I certainly haven't seen it.
Thanks for that feedback. Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Holcomb. I will check. It may not have been the same signage everywhere. So that the audit was done to assess, was there a need for additional signage? But I will get for councillors a complete list of what's actually been installed and where on the map.
Okay.
Councillor Sladen.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Madam CEO, the hubs are all going to have a bicycle repair station. How is that going to be monitored, staffed? Who's responsible for those repair stations?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, Mansfield Shire will be, our officers will be. In terms of the actual officer that do that I'll have to take that on notice.
I don't need to know.
As to whether it's going to be one of our field services team or one of our tourism team, but we already do maintain bicycle repair stations. We already have some in place, but this will increase the number.
Right. Okay. And that's funded through this program?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, everything installed has been fully grant funded. The ongoing replenishment or maintenance of it will be council's responsibility.
Right.
And that's the reason why the MOU is in place.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So do we know how much that is yet? MCO? What the funding is? How much have we got to chip into this?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the total funding allocated to the project was 75,000. We don't have to make any co-contribution in terms of our ongoing maintenance contribution. Look, I don't have a figure for that. I can get you one. It's not going to be big. We're not talking a lot of dollars here. As I said, we're already maintaining some of these. I can find out the typical maintenance cost for one of these sites, but it's not a big cost.
Does Tourism Northeast expect council to maintain the roads on the routes to a higher standard than we normally do?
No, through you, Mr. Mayor, that is an excellent question. One of the purposes of the app is actually to give better information to cyclists on what they will experience en route, and so that there's a degree of difficulty associated with the route, and that they are aware of the conditions that they may encounter. So no, there is no obligation in terms of improved maintenance of the road.
I have another question too. Is the MOU dependent upon Mansfield Shire Council being a member of Tourism Northeast? If we weren't a member of Tourism Northeast, does that MOU, is it just between council and TNE?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you got some great questions tonight. As I understand it, it exists between us and T&E as an entity.
Yep.
Whether or not we are a member of T&E, I think that obligation will continue. But I could, yeah.
And what would be the trigger for safety concerns upon a route? Would it be one or two people with grave concerns about safety, or would it? What would trigger the alteration or the deletion of a route? Do you know?
Look, I think that's probably through Ms. Mayor open for discussion. If we get a lot of concern coming back, if we get a lot of residents contacting us and or property owners are joining the routes, and they will give us feedback, I'm quite sure, of any concerns or that they've seen in terms of the history of the roads. We'll just work through those and see if it's something that can be reasonably addressed or not. If it can't, I think you know, we would be looking to have that route removed.
Sure. So that would be open to agricultural contractors, transport companies, etc. as well.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it? Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. So it is, through you, Mr. Mayor, it is actually still live on our Engage page now. So if there's anyone wanting to give us feedback, it's very welcome.
Thanks. Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Sladen.
Oh, just a clarification. I mean, if the route is removed from this app or this project, doesn't mean that cyclists can't still ride on these roads. They're public roads, so people cycle them at their own risk, I suppose. Yes.
Any other questions or comments, councillors? Councillor Tian.
Yeah, I just have one final comment in regards to this. I think that my suggestion would be that this app is put on hold until the community consultation is finalised, finished, and we have a full list of comments from the community. I think we might have put the cart before the horse.
Or maybe the bike before the horse. Thanks, councillor Tian.
I think the horse came first.
Any other councillors got questions? In this case, there's a recommendation before council. Councillor Webb.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Motion being that council notes the report and associated memorandum of understanding established with T&E for the activating gravel cycling project.
Thank you. Have I got a seconder?
Happy to second that.
Councillor Sladen. Would anyone like to speak to that motion?
No.
No. In that case, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour of the motion? The motion is carried. Thank you.
And through you, Ms. Mayor, I will put that request to T&E.
Yep.
We can
Thank you.
hold until consultation completed.
Right. Item 14 is the council meeting resolution action status register. Have we got any? Oh, Councillor Webb.
I'd like to move a motion, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
Council receive and note the Mansfield Shire Council meeting resolutions action status register as at 5th of April 2024.
Thank you. We've got a seconder.
That's somewhere to go.
Councillor Holcomb. All those anyone want to speak to that motion? All those in favour of the motion? Motion is passed. Item agenda number 15, advisory and special committee reports, nil. 16, authorisation of sealing of documents, nil. And so I will close the meeting with thank you very much, everybody, for coming in tonight or watching. And I'll remind you that Anzac Day is on. Most councillors will be going to Anzac Day for the dawn service. Bonnie Doon, Mansfield, Merrijig and Jamison. So we'd love your support. Good night. Thank you very much.
Cheerio.